Casual Magic has been brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can get cool stuff. Use the code CASUAL to get 5% off of your sale. And then also by Coalesce Apparel, where you can get really cool t-shirts and stuff, and use the code CASUALMAGIC to get 10% off your sale. And by Archidect, a deck hosting website that doesn't really sell anything, but they like me and I like them, so kindly use them. And now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., Coalesce Apparel, and Archidect. Today, I'm super stoked. I mean, this is an interview show. Every single episode, I've been super stoked, so I guess that's not really a good intro, but it's my intro by Crumb. Today is... I've got the hosts of one of the first ever Magic content I ever consumed when I came back to the game 1.5 billion years ago. Meghan and Maria from Good Luck High Five / Magic the Amateuring, which really, I'm glad you've changed the name because neither of you is amateur and haven't been for a long time. And it would be a really weird nomenclature to have after your 500th episode.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to be here.
Oh my God, I've been fans of you two for a decade, and it's the honor and pleasure is all mine. I have to say before we start, because these shows are always sucky if I'm a fan of the people I'm talking to, so I apologize in advance because I'm a fan of the people I'm talking to. But really, it's super important for everybody to understand how vitally important Magic the Amateuring was when it came out for so many of us who were just coming back to the game or just starting the game, or because it came right in 2012, 2013, something, right at the dawn of the big wave that we are all riding after Xbox's Duels of the Planeswalkers came out, after Innistrad, when everybody suddenly the giant wave of new players came into Magic. And who do we have for content? We had limited resources, which is great if you're Luis Scott Vargas, or I don't know, reading Mike Flores articles or something, which is great if you played in the dawn of time. So having people like you who are A, ladies, B, brand new, C, learning to play the game and documenting all of your garbage and your mistakes and doing it in the most funny way possible gave so many people a soft entry into a very hard learning curve of learning this game. And it's incredibly important, especially as you guys are hitting 500 episodes. That's insane. That might be one of the longest running Magic content ever.
I
And
think it's pretty high up there. I mean, Limited Resources has been going on, obviously, for a very long time.
Limited Resources is definitely the longest, but then there's Loading Ready Runs probably up there. I mean, look, the point is y'all are too. And I just want to extend my gratitude and thanks for just what you did for us as a community when we didn't have anything else like it. And then seeing both of you go start writing and doing more commentary and showing up everywhere. I don't know. I'm just I am in awe of the work that you two have done. And I'm glad you're still kicking with
Thanks
us.
so much. I always love to hear people's relationship to our show. I feel like especially, we talked about this a little bit on our 500th episode about how hard it's been in the past couple of years during the pandemic, because before this, before 2020, you could go and you could see people at events. And it was so nice to be able to put faces to listeners, because podcasting, you just you put it out there.
Yeah.
And you know that there are listeners on the other end, but it can be really it's not lonely because we have each other, but at the same time, there's a little bit of loneliness to it, because you're here goes my art.
Try starting an interview podcast and then having lockdown happen 2 weeks later. How am I going to get guests? Hell if I know.
Yeah. So I love hearing when people are like, oh, I've been listening, or I listened at the beginning, or even when people are like, oh, I listened and then I stopped for a little bit and I picked it back up. I just love hearing people's long-term relationship to the show, because it's just so cool. It's so cool to think of the show being out there as part of people's Magic journeys.
Right.
I like this too, because you're talking about us starting the show like we had a plan, like, "Oh, we're gonna do
Yeah.
this show, and we're gonna welcome people in, and it's gonna be a warm, welcoming environment for people who are learning." And, like, that's what it ended up being, and I'm very proud of that, but also, we were just messing around.
We
I
were
mean,
just
how many
some
podcasts
nerds.
have started like that though, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's two friends who are just like dawdling around. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is funny. Let's tape it. And then suddenly it's like now you're like legitimate experts of the field and incredibly well known and acknowledged. I mean, for God's sakes, I was the other day I was watching because that's how deep pandemic has hit me. I started watching old coverage, and I was watching. There was, I think, a modern tournament, Megan, where you were in like the first round playing like elves or something. Was it
Oh,
GP
yeah.
Richmond?
I
Redmond? I
wanna
don't
say
remember.
or, I played elves at GP Dallas Fort Worth.
Yeah, one of them you were on like they put you in the feature match area, and I was like, "Yay! I know her. It's awesome." Um, that's just very exciting to me because like old GP coverage is like comfort food these days because it's just like, look, there's BDM reading some crap about a card and Marshall telling me about Ral Zarek. Life is good. Um,
And the 2 announcers freezing, absolutely freezing in a convention center
right?
somewhere.
Oh, I
Yes,
still
seriously.
remember working a GP Atlanta one year, and it was, like, in the, like, sub-basement convention hall, and it was so cold, by the end of the day, I looked at my fingers, and they literally had a blue tinge to them. Like, my fingers had begun to turn blue, I was so cold.
I would take, hotel comforters and bring them with me to the convention center and wrap myself in them from the waist down when doing GP coverage.
And you're from the waist up, you've got like the full formal newsreader outfit,
Yes,
and then underneath you're just
absolutely.
straight up granny mode. I love
Yep.
it.
I mean, I was usually knitting at those Grand Prix too, so you're not far off.
I mean, you had a lot of time to kill. But also, I feel like a lot of people don't understand this, Maria, but you have like a lot of Emmys and a lot of just like experience being a professional doing this crap. So it's weird that you decided to come to our space of silly card town. Um, so every time I think about that, I'm like, what the hell am I competing with here?
I love that you call it Silly Card Town because I mean, like, that's why people come, right? And become content creators. I think a lot of the time, I all of my Emmys were for my work behind the camera, so I never was on camera getting any of these. I was
They look cool though.
they do look beautiful, and you can kill a man with them. They're extremely heavy.
They're
Um,
very weighty.
they are hefty. Um, and I don't think I get to keep them. They're like not technically mine. There's something on the bottom that says, in the event of her demise or whatever, they go back to the Emmy committee. They cannot be transferred to anybody else, which I think is kind of wild.
I think
That's
they put
wild.
that on there, but that's not actually true.
Yeah.
Otherwise, pawn shops would
They're
have
not going
like,
to come check.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're like,
Are they
I'm
gonna
sorry,
know?
ma'am, you won this Emmy in 2007. We need it back now. Like,
There's
we got to give it to the other 2007 winners. Like,
But
there's
like
like a
the
knock on like your like great grand niece's
yeah.
door, and they're like, it's the Emmy police. We're here.
yeah,
We're
like
here to retrieve an Emmy that we hear that you got illegally.
it turns out the calendar looped back around to 2007, so we need to take it back from you, please.
But that's precisely it, right? The silly card time. Like I my work was very very fun and I did truly love it. A lot of it was arts documentary focused, but that's, a serious topic. I'm documenting people doing something that they love, but you want to be the person who's doing the thing that they love,
Right.
right? And so it gave me an opportunity to just be able to be fun and be silly and make this thing where I didn't have to worry about getting it right on somebody else's behalf.
So, can I ask you to then, um, how did you start in magic? How did you find it? And then how did you decide to start the show?
Yeah, so we had like an ongoing kind of like not game night because it wasn't always the same night, but like a game meetup with a friend of ours. And we would play different various games. And then one day they were like, "Oh, hey, do you want to learn magic?" And we were like, "Sure, okay." And it was
Future you is
literally
like, no, say no.
and it was Mirrodin battle decks. It was like two Mirrodin pre-constructed decks that we
Huh.
learned to play against one another.
Original or no, Scars and Mirrodin, I guess, at that time?
I
It was
like
they were
I
single color, so it was like a red deck and a green deck, you
Okay,
know?
cool.
Yeah. And I legitimately I don't remember anything else about them except that I remember that there's like there's art that definitely these days I can be like, "Oh, that takes place on Mirrodin," like thinking back.
Yeah. There's like,
But I
oh,
don't.
there's spikes and things, sure.
Yeah, exactly. And like weird silvery blobs. Like, "Oh, Mirrodin, okay."
Isn't it weird? Incidentally, just to interrupt you, isn't it a little wild when you think about it now? It's like you can look at any random card and immediately identify like 40 things about it before you even see the text.
Yeah,
And
exactly. You're like,
like,
"Oh, this jerk's on Ixalan."
yeah, right. You're like, oh, yeah, this came out in 1997. Of course I know.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, we play this game on our show called the randomizer. We'll hit the random button on Scryfall, and
mm,
a random card will come up, and I'll show Megan the art, or she will show me the art, and we try and guess what the card does based on the art.
I
And
love that.
and it's like surprising how often I get the
Yeah.
mana cost
Maria
right,
is very good at mana cost.
but
But right,
nothing
like
else.
you can usually also get like you're like, "Oh, this is definitely a creature. This is
Yeah.
hmm
definitely an artifact or a land or something like that."
Yeah,
Um
seriously.
yeah, and so our friend was like, "Oh, do you want to learn magic?" And we were like, "Okay." And then like literally skip ahead like 1 week and we were at a party with friends who don't play magic and Maria and I like had these decks and we're like sitting on the floor playing magic at this party.
Ignoring everything
Ignoring
else at the party.
and
Did you two know each other before? Or,
yeah, we met through we're both in comedy sports, which is an improv group here in
hmm
Minneapolis and all over the US and some internationally as well. So we had originally met through that. And that
cool.
was the party that we were at was like a comedy sports party.
Oh, God. So they're all sitting there and like, what are you nerds doing
Yes.
on the floor
Yes.
in the corner?
We were obsessed. It was like I remember playing on the Comedy Sports green room floor before a show,
Oh,
Yes.
God.
you
We
know,
played like everywhere.
everywhere. And then once we learned to draft, which we both love draft so much.
Yeah.
If you're somebody who loves draft, like, and somebody like we didn't know we were people who love draft, right? But then once you learn that you're a person who loves draft and you learn draft, you're like, you've seen the face of God.
Right? Right? Oh my god, dude, I need to tell you. So, like, when I came back to Magic, my friend was like, "Hey, you know, you used to play Magic, and I see you doing this Xbox thing. Why don't we go to this?" So in San Francisco, there's a an Irish pub slash Indian restaurant called Kennedy's. It's run by an old Indian guy. He, for some reason, speaks the language of my family for some reason because. But it's weird. It's an Indian restaurant slash Irish pub because you know you have those, and they
Great.
had draft meetups there, and it was during Rise of Eldrazi. And mind you, this is the first time I'd been playing Magic since in person, in paper, since Visions, right? So it's been like, let's say, 15 something years since then. And I sit there and I crack open this pack. Rise of Eldrazi, mind you, is a weird set. And if you're
Yes.
coming back to Magic, it's a weird set because it's like
They're
none
like,
of
by
these
the
cards have
way,
color.
there's a new color of mana. It's no color.
Right.
Good
And
luck,
then,
buddy.
but the rare I got was the Sarkin Planeswalker that only went down. I've never seen a Planeswalker before. I've never seen a dude who only goes down. I thought this thing had summoning sickness. I'm like, what in the hell is going on with this? Um, and I got shellacked by a bunch of people playing Eldrazi because it was Rise of the Eldrazi.
That was a fast draft format, right?
Oh, no, it was either super fast or super slow. All I know is it was like the Zendikar was really fast. Eldrazi was really slow
Oh, okay, okay,
because it's
okay.
like all 8 drops and then like walls. But it was just wild to me because like I hated draft after that. I'm like, why would I ever do that? And then I tried it for real, and I was like, oh, this is the greatest thing, and I only ever want to play sealed and draft ever again. And then I discovered Commander, and now I have to be the Commander guy. But I still love. So I know what you're talking about though. But yeah,
Yeah,
so you guys are sitting there and discovering draft and jamming drafts. Going, did you find a store
so
to play at?
much. Yeah, we played at what was at the time Mead Hall. Was yeah, like still I still have such fond memories of there because we went there for years.
Yeah.
It was like this cute little shop that had like they just did such a good job. It was in what's known in Minneapolis as a garden level. I know not everywhere has like garden level apartments, but it's like not the basement because it has windows,
Hmm.
but it's kind of a basement. But they did just like such a wonderful job with it. Like
Huh.
it was so lovely and welcoming and
They
warm.
made it look like an old like medieval kind of pub style
Oh,
feel to
cool.
it. So a lot of work went into the graphic design of their logo, and a lot of work and care went into the design of the store. So it was a beautiful place to be in, as
Cool.
well as play cards, and that attracted, I think, a lot of the cool kids in town who wanted to play
Yeah.
Magic.
I think it
We know a
really
lot
helped to
of
like
people in Minneapolis who play Magic. Like, there's a huge,
yeah.
Yeah,
thriving community
it's
there.
a great community here.
And I think we noticed this at the time for sure. Like the vibe there was it was all like it wasn't a bunch of like young spiky people. It was a lot of people who were like at the time like late 20s, early 30s just being like I just want to come and have some chill vibes while I jam a draft, man. Like
Yes, the vibes
don't get all
were
hot-headed up in here.
they were really good. It was just everyone wanted to have fun and they wanted to be silly about Magic. And gosh, what a lucky happenstance that we ended
Mhm.
up there.
That is the best possible way to introduce somebody to Magic, right? Like, if the community is good and relaxed, then you can just take your time and learn it. Like, where I'm from, the local big store is Channel Fireball. So all the feeder stores around the neighborhood are full of people who really, really want to be spiky, like super tryhards. And it's like, so every F&M is like a blood duel to the death. And you're like, okay, bro, I just want to sit and play some Windrake. Maybe leave me alone. Uh, but yeah, that sounds rad. So then how did you decide from there to go start a show together?
Well, I had been listening to Limited Resources. I've been a Limited Resources fan since the jump, as you might guess from my love of draft. And
Who's your host?
well, it was Marshall, and who was the host with Marshall when we started?
Brian was his name Brian?
Yeah, Brian
Gosh,
Wong?
Yes, it was Brian Wong,
I
right?
think it was the person before Brian
Laux?
Wong. Yes, I think it was John Laux was the host with Marshall, because we came in with Return to Ravnica,
Mm,
so right after at the end of Innistrad, um, and there was that website MTG Cast that
yes.
had all of the Magic podcasts, and I was like, "Ooh, look at this!" And there's never been a time in my life where I saw something that I thought was cool and didn't think, "How can I do that?" And so I
I
had
could probably do this better than they can. Let's go.
well, I mean, I revered Marshall. Like the first time I met him, I've told this story before. I had the cold sweats.
Oh
I
my
had the
god,
cold
dude.
sweats.
The first time
Oof.
I met Marshall was at the Theros party at PAX the year after that, and whatever that year was. And I saw him there. I'm like, oh my god! First off, you're 12 feet tall. Second off, thank you so much. Because of your show, I started winning drafts. And he's like, oh hey, great man. And I was like, I got to shake hands with Marshall. And then I ran into like Mark Rosewater, literally because my head is pointing upwards, and Rosewater is like 3 feet tall. So I turned my head and I would thump. I'm like, oh, hey, guy who makes magic. Sorry.
That's the cool thing about Magic. Like we all love the game so much, and you're just gonna find all of your favorite content creators at any given big Magic event.
Right.
Yeah. They'll all be there
They'll
milling
just be
around.
there. But
Yeah,
I
I
love
had
it.
I had gear for recording podcasts because my first love in life was audio, and I thought I was going to go into audio out of college.
Mm,
I worked for NPR as an intern for a while,
that's
and
sweet.
so I had the stuff, and so I was like, well, you should make a show. There's no show with women. There's no show hosted by comedians, and there's no show for learners. So we triangulated those 3 points, and that
Yes,
was
that's
our
actually
angle of
true.
attack.
The
we sent up our satellites and we were like, "All right, the phone call is running. You run the data."
I think that's a part of your show that I really just enjoyed the most is that a lot of Magic content in the early days was definitely 4 dudes in a room talking very, like, numbers heavy Magic, right? Like, very much like, "Oh, we should be cutting this 3rd card from the sideboard," or whatever it is, like, really just super grindy, spiky Magic. And then you 2 were just, like, giggle bunnies, and I'm like, "Let's go."
I
Like,
remember well 4 dudes in a room.
Oh, that was a
4,
seminal
like,
show for
Oh,
me,
yes.
truly.
yeah.
One of my favorite television programs.
It's like if somebody looked at TV and said, "You know what we need to emulate for podcasts? Every Sunday
Yeah.
morning public access show that nobody watches." Where it's like, 4 dudes in suits sitting in a quiet room reading books to each other and saying, "Well, today in the constitutional law review." I'm like, "Dude, no, 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 no. This is not how you get guests. You gotta be fun and
But
funny."
also, too, that's a great point because at the time, podcasts were still, kind of relatively new, and
Mhm.
a lot of production wasn't being put into them.
No.
And I'm always huge on, quality of production. And so I thought, well, we could do a show and we could, have segments that are recurring week to week. We could put out our
Yes,
show at the same day, at the same time, every week. We could make sure that we have segment breaks and we have little stingers of audio that we put in between them,
exactly.
like stuff like that.
You guys brought a level of professionalism to this game that we did not have before, or that, I mean, because you're right. The format of podcast was really democratizing. People are able to do it. Anybody can make a podcast, but it's hard to, without having understanding of what makes a good radio show, to just make a podcast that people want to continually listen to. And like you could see, for instance, Mark Rosewater, people listen to a show because he's Mark Rosewater, not because it's a well-produced show, because all he does is hit play on his phone and let's go. But they're definitely like, I've heard shows with, like, other Magic level pros who've tried to do podcasts, and you're like, man, you are recording in the sink of a bathroom at a stadium. This is not going to go the way you want it to go.
Oh man, I love Sync Bathroom Stadium Cast.
Yeah,
Right?
man.
Like,
One of my
just
favorites.
the echoes and
Live from the trough.
All those flushing toilets in the background.
Oh,
A
good gravy.
plus stuff.
I mean, early on in my show, I had a guest whose whose computer fan was very loud, and it made it sound like they were on a working air condition sitting on the back of a truck being dragged down the highway. Like, when I had to edit that show to get the audio clarity, it took a very long time.
I mean, people, I love that. Like you said, podcasts are democratizing, but also people's got to listen to this with their ears.
Right?
Like,
You got to care about them.
Like, the audience, you need, if you want to keep doing this, the audience has to be there, and if the audience has to be there, they have to hear your damn show. I'm just saying, for the love of God, pop filters, people. Just really, it's very simple. But so yeah, you stumbled on this idea, and this really, really good one, and it worked out. And like, your show was all over the place for a while early on. A lot of people were listening. It's very, very cool. And I think you actually chose a perfect time to start a show, and especially to start a show called Magic the Amateuring. What a great name until you guys became pros. So I guess relatedly off of that show, I know, brought you a lot of okay, you know what? I have to stop, listener. I'm sorry. This is starting to sound a lot like, and tell me about your life, my friend. It's like, this is like, and that was your life from the 1980s. But and I brought on your mother-in-law. Yeah. Here's your second grade teacher. But what I want to know is, how did you guys get involved with WotC? To do things like coverage and whatever.
Actually, this is a big story.
This is our biggest story, I think.
In the story of Good Luck High Five. So like you
great name change, by the way. Sorry, I keep calling you MTA. That's just habit.
Do you want to know about the name change real quick?
Yes, sure.
Just in case you don't, everybody. So yeah, we were Magic the Amateuring, which it's a fun name, but it was quite terrible because nobody can spell it. Because why should you be able to? It's not a real word.
The second word is made up.
Yeah. And we wanted very early on actually to change the name. And we were like, what about Good Luck High Five? And because
Maria and I had early on misinterpreted when people type GLHF. We were like, oh, Good Luck High Five. And I really hated when people on Moto would be like, GLHF. And I was like, you don't want me to have fun. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, it's Good Luck High Five.
Good Luck High Five makes so much more sense to me. So I Googled it, and it turned out that there was already a Magic podcast named Good Luck High Five with hosts from Minnesota. Okay.
Oh no.
Right? How on earth is that possible? I don't know. They hadn't been active at that point for about 3 years, but we were like, we don't want to, step on any toes or whatever. But then fast forward to however many years later was we changed our name. Yeah. We decided to go for it.
Literally even like 3 years after that, because that was pretty early on. And we were like, we're just going to do this. That podcast has been gone for a long time.
But isn't that the weirdest coincidence you ever heard of in your life?
Yes, that's pretty wild. Like
anyway.
when I went looking for casual magic stuff, I was like, okay, yeah, there's a million magicians out there who do casual magic stuff. That's fine. But Good Luck High Five is that's a very specific kind of name.
Oh man, I will say, okay, sorry, this is another tangent story, but I was once, in terms
This
of
is a
like,
tangent podcast.
yeah, being recognized for the work that you do, I was once taking a lift home from the airport after a magic event, and the Lyft driver was like, "Oh man, I know you. You do a you have a YouTube channel, you do a podcast, right? About Magic the Gathering." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And he was like, "Yeah, I know because I'm like a magician and I'm always trying to find YouTube videos about magic and your show comes up." I was like,
That must be
"Great.
so annoying to
Really glad."
to actual magicians.
Yes.
Oh my god. That never occurred to me that they would
Oh.
also be trying to go on YouTube.
Yeah, it was just a guy who was just like, Your frickin' podcast keeps coming up when I'm trying to find magic videos."
That's hilarious. So,
Okay, oh yeah, sorry. Going back to how we got started with Wizards of the Coast, so like a very, very long time ago now, I wrote an article on Star City Games called Women in Magic,
yes.
which was just basically like, hey, it's rough out there.
Sure
What
is.
what it boiled down to. And also, here are some things that maybe you specifically are doing or some mindsets that you might have, and some problems with visibility that are leading to this. And that was an absolute bad time. I mean, I feel good about the article. I'm saying that it resulted in a difficult time in our lives,
Boy.
because the internet exists.
Yeah, this was before. You've got to, think about the context of when this happened, because I feel like Magic now is a it's still got a long way to go, but it's a more welcoming place now where people have your back with that kind of stuff. A lot of people have learned a lot
Yes.
over the past few years
Yes.
and have grown as people, and that
This is a very long time ago.
Yeah,
right?
this
It
is
was
like before any of that.
2015.
Yeah. So we're talking like, if I'm thinking about like prominent people, like prominent women in Magic, it was like Melissa, Jackie,
Yeah.
Gabby, Maria, me.
Yes.
Add
Yep.
2 to 3 more people, and like I think that you've
I
rounded
think
out the
Athena
list.
was streaming then too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like there
Yeah,
was
exactly. Like literally, like maybe to those 5 names you could add another 5, and
yeah, exactly.
you
Like
you
the fact that
capped
we
it.
can name them all.
Yes,
Right?
exactly. And so it was, like it was difficult. It was obviously like like a real firestorm over on the internet. And so Maria and I did a podcast episode about it. Which then also say, same
Oh,
thing.
you even listed every woman in Magic in the article. I
Yeah,
pulled it up.
Oh my gosh.
Oh wow, it's still out
Yeah,
there.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it was also like the like Erin Campbell and her crew
Oh
for
yeah.
that one podcast that was short-lived, the girlfriend bracket.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's right. Hallie was still around.
Yeah. Wow,
Um,
that was a long time ago.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. And so, like, to Watsy's credit, one of the people who's head of video coverage, Greg, like was like, "Hey, can I talk to you all about like if I want to increase visibility as the person who can hire people to increase visibility, I'll set up a call with you. Who should I hire?" And like we talked about some other names, but at the end of the day, Maria and I were also like, the answer is to some extent us. Like not only are we knowledgeable in your subject matter, but we are also people with backgrounds in the kind of work that you're hiring to do.
Yes.
So yeah.
It's good to live at the exact intersection of what a person is looking for sometimes.
Yes, exactly. Like, oh, I have both your skill set and your knowledge base. Like, so it was a good thing that came out of like that was a lot of glossing over exactly like how like it was a challenging, very challenging couple of
terrible
weeks.
couple of weeks on the internet for us.
And a more
Well, I mean,
challenging year plus.
yeah, I mean, think about it. August 2014 was Gamergate. And that
Yeah.
was like obviously a terrible time for a lot of us who were minorities, a lot of us who were women, and who were in the game space. And that year afterwards was a real crappy time to not be a normal white dude
Exactly.
in the fields that we are in. And then your article hit in that summer of June 15, and that was obviously leading up to the election
Ugh.
of times changing,
Let's
right? And so like
not talk
we were
about
in the middle of a reactionary movement, and because I remember that because obviously being one of the token brown folk in Magic, I had written my essay at that same time about Magic origins and Kaladesh representation and brown people in Magic and how badly they've been failing us. And so it was like a whole lot of disgruntled people finding folks like us and sharing their unhappiness with our existence. And yeah, so it was really great to see like coverage reconfigure itself from just being folks like, Randy Bueller and like BDM to you, right?
Yeah.
Like to actually seeing people like you, to seeing people like Gabby, to seeing like just more vibrancy and diversity and like just
Yeah. And it's wild because, like, right, some of the critiques, I feel like people are like, "Oh, like, what, you don't want these people who have been doing it to keep doing it?" And we're like, "No, we love BDM. He's, like, a very dear friend to us. We're not saying, like, to heck with that guy."
right,
We're just saying, like, "Open it up, man."
right. Like maybe he doesn't need to be the only one.
Exactly.
And if you
Like,
think about too, a lot of the criticism that happened when Gabby was first added on coverage, was, I mean, it was a pretty tough space. I don't want to speak for her, but I saw the comments, we all did. And also, as soon as I started joining video coverage and stuff, and people were just like, they couldn't get used to the idea of somebody new entering the space. But then if you step back and look at what has evolved since then, you have to be like, look at how much
right?
better things have gotten because we've
Yes.
Yeah.
accepted, like, hey, different people make your organization and your product better.
Yeah, it's like that was the one thing that always got me. It's like, folks, don't you understand that if we want this game to exist, this game needs to have players. And if we want to make the more players come into the game so we have more people to play with, we need to widen our player base and reach out to all these people that you guys don't want. Maybe the problem isn't them showing up. The problem is you not opening the damn door. But that's it's really really rough sometimes, especially
Yeah.
like I shouldn't be one of the most prominent brown folks in Magic. That's just like I am way too new. I'm way too like not I should not be a representative of anything. Like that's wild to me. And
That's not true.
well, it's still though, it's
Unless
just
you
like
don't want to, then you cannot
well,
be, but
I mean, look, it's fun. But Sheldon likes to say that I like to or somebody on the rules committee for Commander called me the tank of the RC because I like to just draw aggro all the time and
yeah.
stand out there and light myself on fire for fun. But the point is, we should have such a cavalcade of people from every background and vibrancy of life that you and I shouldn't stand out, right?
Yeah.
Like we should just be another member of the crowd. Hopefully someday we'll get there. Um,
And I think, like, you also touched on something, right? In terms of, like, oh, being a public you're like, "Oh, I shouldn't be a public figure. I'm so new." I think that that's just such an interesting point talking about, like, people are like, "Okay, now the game is more inclusive," right? Like,
mhm.
it has been building out, and now there are all these people, and there's nothing that I love more, honestly, than the fact that, like, I'm not one of the people who comes to mind when you're talking about prominent women in Magic because, like, I have to some extent, like, aged myself out of that role. Like, I've let myself age out of that role.
Mm,
And it's so nice because we should have gotten to have those people. Maria and I should have been able to look at women who are as entrenched in the game as Louise Scott
yes.
Vargas or Huey Jensen or those players, but we didn't get to look at them because back when those players started playing, they weren't allowed. Like there wasn't the space for them. And the same goes for people of color in Magic. Like, yeah, you should have had people that you could look at who had been playing the game for 20 years, but
I
they
mean, that's
weren't
the thing.
allowed, so you didn't get to have them.
Mind you, I have been playing the game for a long time, but it's just like when I came back, it was definitely a different game than when I had left. But it was weird because there was that time there where Wati would be every time a woman would show up in like start popping off in tournaments and being like, all right, yeah, let's go. They would like 2 tournaments later just snatch her up and hire her. And I'm like, "That's great for you guys
Yeah.
to build up your repertoire and build up a whole community. That is awful for us who are losing people to look up to because 'cause you're just taking them off the tour one by one."
Yeah.
Like, Jackie Lee was amazing player, Melissa DeTore is ama I mean, Datora is doing amazing work at WotC now, but
Yeah.
it was still like, where are the role models if you keep taking them away?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Um, that was a long tangent, but I
Yeah.
think the ultimate goal though is that I've really enjoyed watching you two on coverage and reading your works and reading like tournament reports and everything. It makes me happy to see you thriving in that role when, at least when coverage existed. I hope at some point it does again, because it's always fun to watch you show up with a brand new like suit and dress Maria on the thingy and
Oh,
do the
thank you.
news desk
Maria's
roles.
got some awesome
So you had
outfits.
banger outfits, man. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie,
I
they
Yeah.
are
take
really
pride
cool
in it.
looking.
I mean,
And
it's a hobby of mine, but I love that now people like kind of expect it of me
yeah,
too, and so I have a lot of fun.
it's super fun. Like every time there's a pro tour, you show up and it's like, that suit looks like a banana. I'm here for it. Let's go. You know? Um, have you enjoyed doing like pro tour coverage? I mean, I know you don't do booth coverage, but like, what's it like having? So Maria, I guess this one's for you specifically. Sorry, Megan, I'm
Oh,
gonna
good.
let you sit here for a second. But what's it like to do that news desky part of the like pro tour GP coverage? Like, what do you have to do? Because I don't think anybody's ever talked about that.
Wow, great question. I mean, it's different for each iteration of the product you're talking about. So, Grand Prix were one thing, Pro Tour paper coverage was another thing, arena tournament coverage was a third thing, and then
Mm.
online tournaments were a fourth thing. So, the answer to all of them, unfortunately for you and all the listeners, is something completely different
Ah,
for all of them. I will say I do have one constant across the whole shebang, which is it's a job where people don't necessarily want to see you, right? Okay,
get to the games.
they want to watch the magic, but it is a very necessary role because there's just no way to be able to give people that unless you've pre-recorded the tournament weeks earlier and edited it, right? And that's not what's happening. So I do need to be there to be the accordion between the games of magic that are happening. So I try to have a lot of
What an
fun when
image.
I'm there. I just want people to like hang out and be like, remember what we're doing? We're playing the best game that exists. You know, this is the best game, and we all get to be here together, hanging out and watching it and watching some of the best players do their thing. And isn't that awesome? And so I just try to remind everybody of the fun spirit of why we're here in the first place. Um,
Mm,
that's kind of just my I don't know, that's my attitude I try to bring to the news desk is that fun, happiness. Because
yes,
sometimes we can get kind of entrenched when we're in there in the rounds and
boy.
there's like lots of decisions being made, lots of heady plays, all that kind of stuff.
Or like, hey, it's the 38th Yorion mirror.
Yeah,
Let's
well, for sure,
go.
that too. But aside from that, the other thing that is constant across all forms of these different kinds of hosting is that you have to always be prepared. So you never know when something's gonna blow up, something's gonna go wrong, something's gonna break.
You better have something to fill the time
You
because you're the
better
only
be
one the
able to
camera's on
fill the
there.
time. My first pro tour I ever did, I was not prepared to fill the time. This is a pro tour I got strep throat.
Oh
Um,
no.
Oh my
this
goodness.
this is you remember that? This is pro tour Nashville.
You had a strep throat, and I twisted my ankle on
Oh
the
my God.
like walking around Nashville.
Yeah. It
Oh
was
no.
it was a pro tour of injuries. And like I went to the doctor and I'm like, I need to do this job. This is my first pro tour. Hit me with the shots. And they're like, boom. They shot 2 huge needles into my butt and were like,
Oh,
get
God.
back out there. They didn't say that. I said that to myself. It was fine. I
I'm
wasn't
sure the
contagious.
doctors were like, now go lay down.
What do you think you are, a linebacker? Come on, chill out.
But I got there and I finally got better and did the job. But anyway, I was told to stretch at one point when I was interviewing none other than Louis Scott Vargas, and I had no idea what to do. And it was the worst 2.5 minutes of my life.
Oh no.
Okay? Worst. And so I took that moment. I was like, that is literally never happening to me ever again. So anytime you see me on air, I have prepared a short novella
Yes.
to go to at any given moment should the need arise.
Ah, that's awesome. But it's weird because like LSV is the easiest person in the world to talk to.
Oh my
Like, and
gosh,
he will
not if
go.
you're a young presenter who's just starting off and he's the best player in the game.
That's fair.
That's
He's very
intimidating.
intimidating if you don't know.
Yeah.
But I've definitely had interviews like that where I'm like, I know how to do this. However, I'm deeply intimidated by the person I'm talking to, so this is going to go very poorly. Um, yeah, I don't know. Have either of you guys wanted ever to do the like the color commentary or play-by-play stuff?
I have done play by play. I did that before I was a host. So I did a lot of play by play, mostly at Grand Prix. I never did it for at the Pro Tour level, but I had
Mm.
a lot of fun doing play by play. I had a lot of great co-hosts that I loved working with over the years. Um, Color, no, no, thank you.
You don't wanna be like, "Yeah, I'm sure he's got a third one in there right now." It's like,
Like, I approach the game from a level of fun and, like, I'm kinda downplaying myself, like, when I
You're
prepare, I
hella
do know
good at
what's
this,
I
dude.
know
You're
what's
hella
going
good at
on,
this.
but, like, I don't wanna be the expert, that's what I'm trying to say. I
Yeah.
wanna throw that to somebody else who's approaches the game from a more spiky angle.
Right. That's exactly it. It's like because I tried to do this once during the Channel Fireball was having their like arena uh tournaments or arena GP at the beginning of lockdown. They called me in to try to just do like commentary late at night and they put me with a pro and I'm like, "Yo, I'm a commander player and a podcaster. I know Magic really well, but how the hell do I commentate a 48th Yorion mirror on like friggin' arena? I don't know." Um
Mhm.
but it turns out your jobs are much harder than they look, and they look hard. Like, though I don't know, the thing is I'm always in awe of people who can sit there and predict what the next card is gonna be and be like, "Oh, yeah, of course he's gonna play the terror here. Why
That's
wouldn't
Mani
he?"
Davuti right there, always knows what's
Monty's
up.
really, really good.
Monty's
Like
so great.
I don't know where he came out of nowhere, but he's, like, hella good at this. Um, Everybody on your team is. I mean, Rich Hagon is such a cool dude, and everybody downwind from him is also just equally cool.
Well, I talked about not knowing what to say for 2.5 minutes, and I will give Rich the most credit that it's ever been given to anybody for somebody who can talk. He's
I
bragged
was
he can
gonna
probably
say,
go for 2 days straight.
Rich
Oh, yeah.
Hagan has never had a 2 minutes he didn't know what to do with.
Oh my god, dude. He will if he can't do anything else, he'll just start punning and you will just be dying. It'll be the most amazing. I need to get him on the show. I love Rich Hagon. I'm like such a huge fan of his. Um man, I
He
miss
once wanted to
tournaments.
do a segment called Rich the Shuffling Clown, which was a
Yep.
puppet pretending to shuffle cards. No explanation, no audio. If I remember, like, nothing, just, like, the sound of this puppet trying to shuffle cards.
Oh, no, there was audio. It was this, "I'm little Rich the shuffling clown," and
Oh,
then
that's worse.
the clown would shuffle.
No, this is not okay, and I'm not here for this.
You have to interview Rich about this because it's truly one of the most disturbing pieces of magic media that's ever been created, and I say that with love.
I will say this. I have always enjoyed your segment where you had, like, Nicol Bolas show up or the various other random characters to do sketches
Oh,
with. Like,
we
those are
should
always just
have
funny
them
as hell.
back. Magic Von Expert, the Magic Expert Magic Von Expert, a a perennial favorite of listeners.
Didn't y'all have a YouTube, like, I feel like there was a show or something you did that
My
was
roommate is a planeswalker.
Yes! I love that show. That was so much fun. I watched every episode
Oh,
multiple times.
it was a lot of fun, but it's just a lot of work.
Yeah, I feel like putting on an actual, like, scripting a show and things is probably significantly harder than just putting 2 microphones in front of clowns and just letting them go.
Really, it was the number of wigs.
Lots of wigs.
So many wigs. We, to this day, have a lot of wigs.
Got a lot of
Well,
wigs in our studio.
Got a
I
lot of
feel like
wigs.
I feel like that goes along with the territory for y'all. I mean, you're improvers, you have wigs. You've been to Loading Ready Run, you know, their
They
stash of just
they have the
Oh,
costume
dream
garbage.
right.
stash of
Yeah.
wigs. Ah,
And
what
of
a
course,
thing.
yeah, you guys are also fellow PPR alums. It's always fun to see you on there. Oh my god, the what you guys were at the unstable one, right?
Yes, the
Unhinged?
one where Mark Rosewater dressed as a
Yes,
squirrel.
Sure
where
were.
the greatest game of all time, where like Rosewater is where they played Scheherazade.
Yes, and
Yep.
they started a sub game.
Yes, and it was like just what is happening? This is the greatest things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, it was
You
very
were so
good.
funny during that whole hour, that whole afternoon. I was just dying the entire day. It's still one of my favorite PPRs I think ever, and that even counts the ones that I got to be in.
Thanks. It
Like,
made
I'm
up for
not
the
nearly as
time
funny as y'all, but boy, it's fun to watch funny people be
they had to
funny.
make up for the fact that they made us go to the one where Blake made me play a game until I physically died.
Oh god, was
You
that
remember?
was like Blake sitting there in just like 2.5 hours of blue control?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
He
Cloud
just had a
Blazer.
deck where he had Cloud Blazer, and then he would flicker Cloud Blazer, and then he would play another Cloud Blazer, and I was like, it was a game that I still think some
This
part of
is
me
a
is
game
playing.
that will not
This
end.
game
Yeah.
was so long that it disrupted the entire pre-release production schedule. We couldn't
Yes.
go out for dinner. We had
No,
to order
because
food in.
Oh no.
because everywhere was closed for dinner by the time the
Yeah,
pre-release
that
was
went on
over.
for yeah, I think at some point if I was
Oh.
Graham or something, I would have been like, "So, speed it up,
Can we
guys.
leave?
Slow play, maybe." What
Oh,
has been your favorite like experience at a pro tour?
Oh.
Or
oh,
who have been the
man.
coolest like players you've seen or anything like that? What do you think stands out to you from being able to have gone around the world to see all these things?
Man, I would say, like, this is rude because it's not about Magic.
Hmm.
But we've worked Barcelona events twice now, and it's just not a place that, I like, I don't know if it would have been on my radar really as, like, I've gotta go to Barcelona in my
Oh,
lifetime.
Barcelona is amazing.
I know, but now that we've been there, it is one of my favorite places I've ever been in my life, and to this day, like, I tell people, like, if you can go to the Sagrada Familia before you die, you have to. Like,
Yeah.
it is the most unbelievable piece of art and architecture that I've ever seen in my life. I will I think about it all the time, very honestly.
It is it is stunning. It's one of those buildings you look at and you're like, "How did a human make this?"
Exactly, like, literally looking at it, I'm like, "I cannot believe that a person dreamt of this." Like, it feels a little bit
It's
beyond
like weirdly
human.
organic and thing.
Yes,
I don't know. It's
it's
cool.
amazing. Yeah, so
I mean, you're not wrong. The Sagrada Familia is absolutely incredible. Um, I got to go to Kyoto for a trip. I would have never
Mm,
gone there otherwise, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. I think even just being at a pro tour, paper pro tour, there's something magical about it. You walk out during a round if you're birding, any of the
mhm.
players out in the main field, and it's silent, but you can hear just like people flicking their cards around and playing their cards,
Unless
and
yeah.
you just
Kibler's there, at which point just
well, yeah, then it's a hurricane behind him. But like and then you walk over to table like 5 and 6 where the players are doing really good, in day 2 or whatever, or you get to watch a draft and the feature match and you're marking down their cards they took. And it's just like the electricity in that room is palpable and you can
Mm.
just feel all of the best players there, just everybody's hopes and dreams. You can feel their hopes and dreams when you're just walking around and you get to just watch them. You're like, oh, I'm gonna look over Reed Duke's shoulder here for a second
Oh god.
and watch what he's doing. It's just like you can't do that every day of your life, and then you get to talk about it.
Right? It's so
Pretty cool.
cool. I don't know. It's like every time I watch like Reed play in person, it's just like, oh my god, this guy's just he's intimidating. He's so nice. And yet you watch him play and you're like, I'm gonna lose because I can't deal with that stare. He's just staring all the time. And you're like, oh god, I'm gonna misplay because I can't look away from his beautiful eyes. Um, but like you look like the Japanese players, for instance, just like dead silent, ice cold, and obliterating you. Like I was watching another pro tour final with like Shuhei or something doing some blue control nonsense or whatever. And it's just like, how do you deal with these guys who are sitting there staring at you and they're like, he's got a counterspell in his hand and you have to do something because you're going to die otherwise. And you do it and he plays it and you're like, I knew it was there. And because that's the only thing in your hand. And he's like, yeah, well, it's going to take me 4.5 hours to beat you. So just sit here and think about what you did. And I'm like, no, no. Yeah. Japanese players intimidate the hell out of me.
You remind me of Autumn Burchett's Steely Glare winning with Mono Blue
Oh,
Autumn
at the Mythic
Burchett is like
Championship.
a Terminator.
Yeah, it was
Mhm.
it was
That was
intense.
pretty cool.
And then, Emma running out and knocking them over and it's like,
Yeah,
ah!
very
One
very
of the
cute.
great endings to a what was it? That was the first Magic Championships.
First
Yeah,
Mythic Championship.
Mythic
Yeah,
Championships.
one.
Don't we call them Pro Tours again now, right? That's okay again?
Yep.
Yeah, good times. So 500 eps in, y'all have done a lot of things, and you've done like, how do you stay invigorated and active? And what keeps you coming back to doing this? Especially as you said, we're coming out of lockdown where everything got weird for Magic and like Pro Tours kind of faded out. And like, how do you stay invested in doing this?
I mean, one of the honest things is like, man, a really good draft format still is just
Yep.
Right?
an exquisite experience. Like Kamigawa Neon Dynasty,
Oh God, the best, the best.
I cannot count how many times I drafted that because it was hundreds because it was so good. Like
When Kamigawa went away, I stopped drafting on Arena until Kamigawa like flashback drafts came back, and
yeah,
I'm
you're
like,
like, okay,
yes,
we can
I'm
do this
going
again.
home. Forget you, Capenna. Never again. God, drafts have been abysmal lately, except for Kamigawa. It's just not been happy land in drafting town. Um, did you guys get to play Baldur's Gate yet?
No, but
Yeah.
or yes, Baldur's
Well,
Gate, yes.
I've played it just a little bit. It was one of the sets that I got to work on.
oh, wait, what?
Yeah, I started doing creative text teams in 2020.
Well, hang on. How are you not going to tell me this until
Oh,
like the last 10 minutes of the show? Come on.
sorry. Yeah, it's just something like because it's such a process that's like I you work on it so far out.
Yeah.
The first one that I ever worked on was Adventures in the Forgotten Realms.
Mm.
And then so it's only been that one, Crimson Vow, this one, and then I worked on March of the Machine.
Oh,
Um, yeah. So
that's
yeah.
cool.
When we talk about like, like we talked a lot about casting in terms of like goals and stuff, but like for me for a long time, one of the things was looking at card names and looking at flavor text. I was like, hey, someone has to be out there writing this.
They
Like
sure do.
that's a thing. That's a job. That's a job to write these things. And for a long time, it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, I don't know how it's done. It just hasn't come up that they've been hiring for this kind of thing or whatever.
Yeah.
But then in 2020, I want to say it was maybe Mike Turian
Mm.
was like, oh, hey, I happened like was like posted somewhere, hey, the people who do the creative text teams are hiring if you're interested, like send me a message. And I was like, absolutely. You have to take a whole test and everything.
Yeah, I know. I actually tried to do that, but then the person who was my contact at WotC left the company, and so I was like, "Oh, well, I
Oh
guess
no, I'm
alas."
sorry.
Um, but it's okay though, because it's like it's super cool, but it's also really hard.
It
I know
is
how that
very
process works. It's
it is
challenging,
legitimately very challenging.
but that's
Um,
super cool.
but
Is
yeah,
it
it was
wild to be
definitely
able to open up a magic pack and see something you worked on in there?
oh, absolutely. It is like it's really cool to have done it and been like, this was once upon a time something that I was like, oh, if only.
That's sweet.
I
That's
love I
super
love
cool.
words. I love putting words together to be evocative, and like that is the essence of flavor text and card names.
Flavor text is where you learn how to be as specific and simplified as you can. It's like
Yes.
tweets back when we had limits on how much letters you could
Yes,
write.
I know. It's
When you
just
had
kind
to
of
be
like just
erudite
so
and very like on point.
oh, and it's so much fun because like sometimes it's like, oh, does this need to be about like fleshing out a new world, or can this be something that is just evocative of this character, or just something that is emotionally evocative of like the tone of this set? It's so much fun. It's such a like it's a challenge I relish.
And then what is the 38th version of lightning bolt that you can
Yes,
come up
exactly.
with?
Also, which my flavor text is on the Baldur's Gate version of Lightning Bolt.
Oh, that's sweet. So, as we kind of bring the ship to a close here, tell me your thoughts on Siege Rhino.
Oh my god.
One of my
How
favorite cards of all time.
how could you
Yeah.
50 minutes, I thought we were friends, we're having a nice talk, we're just chatting it out, and now this. The
I
knife
love
in
Siege
your
Rhino
back.
so much. Oh my
I
god, I miss
I
that
am
card.
Julius Caesar. Wow.
How do you I remember I talked to you both a long, long time ago because I wanted to see what your thoughts on Commander were, and you're like, we don't really play Commander, but this was like 2015, 2014, something like that. In the years since, have you guys decided to explore any of the casual side of Magic?
One, we do love it. We have recently gotten more into Oathbreaker.
Mm,
Um,
also a local Minnesota invention.
yeah, exactly, which is very fun. But I'll let Maria give, the reason why truly we cannot play as much Commander as we want.
The true reason is 100 cards is too hard to shuffle with hands as small as
It's
ours.
so hard to shuffle 100 cards, and that is like, it sounds like a joke every time we say it, but it is the honest truth. How do you shuffle 100 cards?
With great difficulty. Assuming you
Uh,
don't have like Huey Jensen's giant paws or anything like that.
it's nice to know that at least you all you're just out there suffering through it. We were just like, "How do people do this?"
There are people who come to me every day. It's like, hey, you guys need to get rid of the deck size limitations on Commander decks.
Oh,
And I'm like, are you insane?
What do you
Like, you know how
are
big
you
that deck box is gonna be? You know how many sleeves you're gonna you know how you're gonna shuffle the damn thing? Are
do
you
you own
kidding
a
me?
personal automatic shuffler or something? Like,
You can't put it through like little Vegas, like the
yeah,
big
exactly,
shoe that goes. Oh my
oh,
god.
it's like there have been times I've been playing a game of Commander and I have not cracked like an Evolving Wilds because I don't wanna shuffle my deck after searching it.
You would hit my Titania deck, which is like, 30% fetches by volume.
Oh, and I
oof.
love her as a legendary creature. I love what she does, but we
There are
have, like,
times when you're just like, we're gonna shortcut this because this is gonna suck
yes.
a lot.
I was gonna say Maria and I, when we are playing, like, sometimes we just play Heads Up Commander. We've done it for videos sometimes. We just have, like, a gentleman's agreement of, like, I'm just gonna search, like, the top third of my deck for this, and if I find it, we agree, I just shuffle the top third and slap it back on there.
Great.
I think you would appreciate the mulligan rule that the rules committee has taught me for having to avoid having to shuffle every time, which is just set your hand aside and draw the next seven, and then draw the next seven, and then draw the next seven until you find a seven that you want to keep, and then shuffle the rest of the hands in
That's genius.
instead
That
of
is
having to shuffle
exactly
every damn time.
Yep, that's
Because it's a
it.
100 card singleton, whatever. You'll get there's some mess of lands eventually.
We
Um,
learned we learned something new here today that is very helpful.
Yeah, like it's funny because thinking about people with big hands, I was the one GP memory that sticks out to me, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I'm going to tell you now, is because Huey and Marshall were standing in front of like the stage area, but they were standing on the ground and they're just standing talking to each other, and they're both like 15 feet tall or whatever, and they're just about equal height, so they're looking and standing, and just the desks is behind them, so they look almost normal height people, and then Gabby walks by and Gabby is like knee height to these guys. And I'm just like, oh, they're huge. And she had to like stand up onto the raised desk in order to actually be able to talk to them because they were so much higher. And I'm like, that's a that's not something you see every day.
The weather's
No,
different
never
up there
really.
for them, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
boy,
Yeah.
it is.
Hey, what's the weather like?
Oh man. Thank you both so much for joining me. I've been a big fan for a very long time. This has been a great pleasure of mine. I know I've been trying to actually find a way to get you on my show for since before this show, on my last show even. So I'm glad I was able to make this work.
Oh,
Thank you for
yeah.
joining me today.
All you gotta do is ask.
Well, ask and then figure out time zones and
Okay, well, that's fair. Maria
have
and
a
I are
kid.
notoriously terrible at time zones. I was once 3 hours wrong. It was my most egregious one. It was very bad.
I got a message from somebody on my who was recording a guest of mine from the East Coast, and they ping me and they're like, "Yeah, I'm here. Where are you?" And I'm looking. It's like it's 5 o'clock my time. I'm at work, and he's like, "You said be here at 8." I'm like, 8 Pacific. You're Eastern. This is not gonna. Oh, well, I guess I'll see you in 3 hours. I'm like, yeah, bye.
Great, buddy.
All right. So, if folks wanted to find you, find your stuff, find your things, do your plugs, where could they go?
All right, everybody. You can find us on the Bird app at GLHF Magic. You can find our website, which has all of our stuff. It's goodluckhighfive.com. You can watch our podcast with your eyeballs over on youtube.com/goodluckhighfive, or just search Good Luck High Five anywhere you get your podcast. You can also search for The Upkeep, which is our 10-minute podcast we put out every Monday that's full of magic news. So if you want to stay up to date on magic news, search for The Upkeep. If you want to have a good time, search for Good Luck High Five.
I love talking to podcasters. You guys have these things professionally down, because we have to say this spiel at the end of every show. And if you want to find me, you can find me at Gear Free Gears. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at Cool Stuff Inc. every Tuesday, or YouTube every Thursday. Thank you, EK. This show is brought to you by Cool Stuff, Coalesce, and Architect. And remember, my friends, it is not magic without the gathering, and we will see you next time.